Hey good people, this week I've been working on the improvements rather than implementations or fixes. I've looked up for several things that will improve the player's experience and prevent him from getting into a stage where he says to himself, okay, the game looks nice, good looking portrait at the bottom left, interesting street with details, but what am I supposed to do? So I came up with a basic and quite simple system that will help the player understand what he needs to do in the beginning of the game. And there's also the learning bonus for me. In the chess game I've built, I didn't make any UI that will help the player understand what he is doing or what he needs to do. First I made a text near the thug portrait saying click me and hold. And then in the center of the map I've placed a text saying and then place me here. To make it a little more clear, I placed few arrow signs that point the player to the portrait. And then more arrows that show the player where he should drag the thug. Also, in the end you can see a portal that points the player where he should release the thug. For aesthetics and learning purposes, I've decided to upgrade the font of the text to something a little bit more attractive to the eye. I've looked up on the internet for fonts for game development and came across a font called Urban Jungle that seemed really neat. I've imported the font into my project and there you see the results. At some point during this week's development, the yellow arrows on the console stacked up and you could say that I've disregarded them. Few days like that and I've started to witness the weirdest bugs I've seen during my game dev journey. I've made changes, saved them, I backed them up, and then Unity changed things on its own when I re-entered. For instance, I could place the arrows you see that were supposed to help the player understand the game, saved, exited, and then when I re-entered Unity would place them in an entirely different location. It took me a few hours to understand this issue and I really banged my head against the wall to understand this phenomenon and I got really frustrated. When I found out that the cause of this was the yellow arrows, I felt like a total idiot. When I got over this hurdle, I made actual rules that would get the game into a conclusion. The first one was a victory condition. I made a script using ChatGPT that is called victory condition. This script is responsible for declaring victory once all the enemies are gone from the map. When I've tested it, I saw why I haven't been specific enough, and for all you watching this, pay close attention. The game consists of multiple waves of enemies that have 15 seconds between each other, in order to give the player time to breathe between waves. When the script makes a command saying once all the enemies are gone, the player is won, so basically that means that after the first wave, the AI scans and sees that once the enemies are either killed or reach their final point, he says to himself, okay, practically that's what I've been told. Once the enemies are no longer in the game, the players won. So yeah, after the first wave is finished, the AI thought the game was over, which was obviously a bug. I immediately fixed it and made it so the victory condition will be first when all the waves are completed and then when the enemies are off the map. So we got a working victory condition, but what about the losing condition? I had two suitable candidates. One is a losing condition which says that when the money reaches 0, the player is lost, or a classic heart system, which means that with each enemy that reaches the final waypoint, 1 heart is decreased. To whomever didn't understand that, when the player is left with no hearts, he loses. The money losing condition didn't make it through the pros and cons process, because there are too many question marks regarding how this system will work. For instance, what if 9 enemies reaches the final point and costs the player $90? So is it a win? Small contradiction there. I've decided to go with a classic heart system. I've asked ChatGPT to generate me a heart image, which I've imported into the project. Once inside the project, I scale it down and place it right under the money UI, and duplicated it so there will be 5 hearts representing 5 strikes, which the player has until he loses. Again, ChatGPT made me a script called Heart Management that commands the game to destroy 1 heart with each enemy that reaches the final waypoint. And when there are no more hearts, the player loses. Of course, the victory and lose conditions got themselves a suitable text that tries to give the player as some kind of ambient feeling, like too many got through, you lost, or we managed to pull them off and you won, like you see in the picture. I'm not sure I've managed to pull that off. I definitely didn't try too hard. But it was for the sole reason that with these implementations the top goal was learning. So this is it for this devlog. I've learned a lot this week. I've managed to pull through really frustrating moments, which I've managed to pass, feeling stronger and more confident. Thank you very much for watching.